Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Business Innovators Radio. I'm your host, Rick Brown. And today we're going to discuss a topic that might just be one of the most intimidating things that I can think of having to do, and that is to sell a home. According to the National Association of Realtors, more than 5.5 million existing homes were sold in the U.S. in 2017, and 91% of those sellers were assisted by a real estate agent. In a 2018 poll asked whether or not those sellers would use the same realtor for another transaction, 69% of them said they definitely would use the same agent again. And according to my own very scientific research and analysis, the number of home sellers who would go to the well again with today's guest to sell their next home is definitely 100%. My guest today is Diane Donnelly, president of the Donnelly Group of Keller Williams Flagship of Maryland. Diane has nearly 25 years working in real estate and remains one of the top producing realtors in the Chesapeake Bay Region. With her team, Diane is president of the Donnelly Group Sellers Division. As the name would suggest, she helps home sellers and consistently sells her clients' homes for an average of 5% more than the traditional realtor and in less than half the time. Diane is a 2018 top producer of gross commission income, a 2017 top producer for units sold, and the Donnelly Group as a whole is a 2017 top team in the region for gross commission income and units sold. And you can check out Diane's latest publication in the Chesapeake Real Producers Magazine, January 2019 issue. Diane, welcome to Business Innovators Radio.
Well, thank you so much, Rick. I am pleased to be here.
Look, I really want to spend some time having you share kind of your best tips for keeping home sellers out of trouble. But can you first tell us a little bit more about how the Donnelly Group is helping their clients overall?
Absolutely. And you bring up so many good points, Rick, and one of the most important things to us as a team is to make sure that we're out there and we're educating our buyers and our sellers. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of global information that's given, and that's a detriment to people when they're looking at global information when they should be looking at local information. So my job really is to break that down so the public sees what's going on globally and nationally, and I break it down to show them what's going on here locally. Because just like you wouldn't look at national news to find out where you're going in Florida, what the weather is, it's the same thing that applies to real estate. You need to look at the stats in your local market. So that's what I do. I don't make the market. I just interpret it and help my buyers and sellers to interpret the data. And most of my day consists of looking at the data, breaking it down, and then communicating that to my sellers. We do that through seminars. We have a seminar for both buyers and sellers. And, just to educate through builders. When we talk with our builder clients, when they have somebody that has a home to sell, we talk to them about the market. Should I or shouldn't I buy the home first with the new construction and sell later? So it's all an education, and we take our time to do that and do it right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as we've mentioned, clearly you are focused these days on working with home sellers, but are there any other qualifiers in terms of the ideal clients for the Donnelly Group?
The ideal client is someone who is looking to make a move, period. So we don't care about what the sales price is. We don't care about the areas as long as it's in our geographic. We've kind of outlined Arundel County as where we do most of our business, but we'll go to the surrounding areas. We will do the business if we know that we can help our buyers or sellers, and we'll say no to business if it's something that's outside of what we know. So, no, there's no qualifiers that will say whether we will take business or not. As long as we know that we can help our clients in any way, shape, or form, we will do that.
Great. And we should point out that I mentioned at the top that you are in the state of Maryland. You mentioned Anne Arundel County, and this is, for those who aren't familiar with the area, in the Chesapeake Bay region of Maryland, around Annapolis. I think your offices are in Millersville, Maryland. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have a few. We have Millersville, Annapolis, and Odenton.
Okay, so just so we are clear on that, what are the advantages of working with a real estate agent versus selling a home on your own, the for sale by owner thing?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's very tempting to try to save the commission and do a for sale by owner, but statistically it doesn't generally happen or it doesn't end well. The reason being is buyers and sellers are coming from different angles. A buyer wants to get the lowest price, the seller wants to get the highest price. The buyer wants to put contingencies in there so that they have an out. Sellers don't want any contingencies. So they're coming at things from two completely different angles, and both of them are emotionally involved in the transaction. And that is what a good salesperson will do. A good realtor will be able to diffuse that and keep those two things, the heated tempers, out of it, so that you can go in with a logical business mind to present your case, whether it is to go in with a lower offer or for a seller to counter offer to come up with a higher offer and a higher net to the seller. So generally speaking, the for sale by owners don't save the commission that they think they're going to save. I can't tell you the number of people, buyers, that come to us and say, I'm going to go look for some for sale by owners because I know that I'll be able to get a better deal. And then when it goes to, when they go to try to do that, the sellers are standing firm with the price that they have. They can't get anywhere with it. And from the seller's perspective, I've represented sellers that tried first to do a for sale by owner. In the industry, we call it a FSBO. And so we've had many for sale by owner sellers come to us and say, okay, I tried, I gave it my best, but we've always got these low offers. Because the strategy for a buyer is to go in and try to get the lowest price possible, knowing that they don't have a commission to save. So when you look at the numbers statistically, the for sale by owners that were successfully sold generally have a lower net sales price than one that was done with a realtor.
Yeah, interesting, and that's the money thing. I want to get into that, but first, you mentioned something about contingencies. Can you kind of explain what contingencies are, what that means?
Sure. There's several different kinds of contingencies, and a contingency is nothing more than a way out for the buyer. So one contingency is a home to sell contingency. So someone comes in, they put an offer on your house contingent upon the sale of their house. So basically, if their home doesn't sell, they have an out. Another one is a home inspection contingency, where they say, I want to buy your home. I want a home inspector to come out and make sure that everything is okay with your home. And then they agree upon any deficiencies in the home to be remedied by the seller. And that's an out for a buyer as well. So if the seller isn't willing to fix some or all, there's an escape out there as well. And then there's some that are a well and septic contingency is another one where they want to check, the water and the quality of the water or the quality of the septic. And if the seller isn't going to remedy it, there's an out there as well. So from a buyer's perspective, they're great to have in there. You can kind of manage your purchase because of these contingencies. And if you're representing the seller like I do, we want to minimize the number of contingencies that we see because we want to have fewer outs within the contract. And
does the seller always have to fix everything that the buyer identifies in a contingency?
Good question. They don't. And oftentimes you will find that the entire list isn't remedied. But within the confines of the contract, depending on how the contract is written, and of course we're talking to an audience from all different states, so we always recommend you talk to somebody locally to know what the rules and regulations are within the confines of your contract. But here in Maryland, it stipulates that if a buyer requests things to be done, they will give both the report and a repair request to the seller, and the seller has a chance and opportunity to review that and say yes or no, or do some of them. If a seller is willing to fix everything, then the buyer needs to stay in the contract, and the contract will move on. If the seller says, no, I won't fix anything, or I'll fix only some of the things, the buyer has the right to terminate the agreement with no consequence.
So it becomes a little bit of a bargaining chip.
Absolutely. It becomes a renegotiation at that point, which is why we try to minimize any kinds of contingencies from a seller's perspective.
What do you think are some of the misconceptions, the common misconceptions around working specifically with a real estate agent?
There's a lot. So I will say the first one is pricing. I would say probably 9 out of 10 times when I go out on a listing appointment and we establish the pricing, we will look at comparables, meaning homes that are of similar size and condition and the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms. And with that, we grab all of that information, we review everything, I review everything with the seller, and then we say, okay, here's the range. Your house is probably somewhere between 450 and 470. They say, great, Diane, I can see that. I see all that data. Let's list it at 500.
Yeah.
So there's a misfire there. And what happens there is they say, I want to leave room for negotiation. So if I had a crystal ball and I could say, Rick, your house is going to sell for 480, and I had your buy-in and I listed it at 480, the chances of a multiple offer situation increases. If you listed at exactly the price where we think it's going to sell, there's an opportunity to price it so that we get multiple offers and it goes above that 480 mark. But it doesn't happen when you list it at 490 or 500 when we know the price is around 470. You've eliminated the option of being able to get multiple offers. So if you have buy-in and you list it at the price that it looks like it's going to sell for, it can organically raise the sales price by getting multiple offers. In fact, I just helped a seller sign an offer today that we had 4 offers on the table, and the reason was we put it exactly where we thought it was going to list or sell for, and it organically went up, so he got over asking price. So it was very well done, and we did it very strategically, and we ended up getting multiple offers and more money in the seller's pocket.
Yes, this kind of goes back to my earlier question, the advantages of working with a real estate agent, because I know I'm going to tell you, Diane Donnelly, that my home's worth, I live in it every day. I know what I've got here. It's worth way more than you're telling me it's worth. But then I'm going to run into those kind of problems that you've discussed, and you are the professional in determining what the home value is, right?
Absolutely, yes. So here's another example of that going wrong. Sometimes agents will tell you, so Rick, tell me, what is it that you're looking for in the home? $500,000? Okay, good. Yeah, let's go ahead and list it at $500,000. And his goal may be just to get the listing, just to get their sign in the yard to advertise their name out there. Where, to me, my job is to sell your home, not to get a listing. My job is to sell your home for the highest price possible in the lowest amount of time. So if I take that $500,000 listing, even though it's a $450,000 house, I'm doing you a disservice. And what happens is, I will be competing against one of those agents who says, yeah, I'll get you $500,000 when in reality we know it can't happen. It's not going to happen. There's no comps to support that. And I go in and I say, I think you should be around 450. You can go to 460, maybe 465, leave a little room for negotiation. But they say, no, Diane, I'm not going to use you this time. I'm going to use this gentleman. He can get me $500,000. And I said, okay, now listen, do me a favor. If he asks you for a price reduction because he can't get you the $500, cancel that contract with him, or write it in the agreement that if you ask for a price reduction, then I'm going to cancel the agreement. I'm going to go with Diane because she told you the truth from the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is they'll call me after a period of time of listing and say, Diane, I'm sorry, you're right. I wasn't able to get that $500,000. And so I just ask for sellers and for listeners out there that when they are trying to price their home, price it with the idea of you being the buyer. If the buyer is looking at your home and your home is worth $450 and you're priced at $500, but they love your house and they're going to write an offer, the agent and the buyer are going to pull their own comparables to establish what the right price is. So that $500,000 isn't going to work. So I would just ask you to understand that when an agent gives you data, that it supports what they're telling you it would be. So on that example, if there aren't any comparables that support that $500,000, you're not going to get it. So just be careful and be wary of somebody that says, I'll get you that number if there's not any support for that number.
So what happens?
It's just going to save you time.
This happened with the first home that my wife and I owned. It was our first home. It was fairly inexpensive by today's standards, and we felt at the time that we were ready to sell that we should price it higher because we wanted to help bring up home values in that neighborhood, and we felt that it would support it. Of course, once we talked to a real estate agent, they told us, that wasn't the best move. But how do you do that? I mean, how does a homeowner try to help their neighborhood in bringing up those home values?
Well, it's very difficult to do that because you're not establishing the price. the buyers are. The market is going to dictate what the local market will bear. So you can come up with $5,000, depending if it's a small townhouse or a condo. You can bring up the value a little bit by having upgraded your home. So you've got the ceramics, the nice ceramic tiles in the bathroom, and you've got hardwood, and you've got the granite countertops and the stainless steel, and your house is in pristine condition. That's going to yield you more than a neighbor who is selling that didn't do any updates or just didn't take good care of the home overall, or there was a lack of maintenance involved. So you can kind of pull some of the value up there. But it's, the appraisal, when a buyer buys the home, the bank who is giving the money is going to require an appraisal. The appraiser is going to be there to support whatever that sales price is if there's comparables to support it. So if let's say that there were 3 homes exactly the same and yours was just a little bit nicer, had a little bit of extra stuff in it, you might find a $5,000 increase, so you've helped. But if you were doing that same scenario and hoping to get $20,000 or $25,000, it just doesn't happen because the appraiser is there to support the bank to say, I am going to protect your asset and I'm going to make sure that the money that you're lending is supported within that community, and they don't want to go too far above it. And they've got ranges that they work within to say, if I've got 3 different comps and they have an extra half bath, they know that might be a $2,500 swing. So they know what their numbers are depending on what the amenities are within the home. So you can't really do a huge shift in the market if the marketplace hasn't supported those numbers before.
All right, so what I'm hearing you say is that regardless of what you feel you should sell your home for, in the end, it is the buyer's lender who is going to listen to the appraiser in terms of how much your home is worth.
That's right. The bank is going to hire the appraiser as a non-interested third party to determine and evaluate what those numbers are, because everybody else can be emotionally involved or have a different reason for wanting that home to sell. The appraiser has no reason to support or not to support other than to protect the bank.
Yeah, everyone else is emotionally involved. I think that's a really important point there. What do you think, aside from trying to kind of figure out where the home is valued, what do you think is the biggest hurdle for home sellers? What is it that most people kind of stumble over coming out of the blocks in terms of trying to sell their home?
I would say there's 2 things that once they sell their home, there's 2 stumbling blocks. The first is the home inspection, and the second is the appraisal. The home inspection can kill deals because if the buyers and the sellers can't come to a meeting of the minds on what can be fixed or credited, because sometimes sellers decide that, I'm not going to put the time and energy into fixing that, but I will give you a credit, and that in most cases that is something that's able to be worked through. But if they can't come to a meeting of the minds, because sometimes the buyers, remember, buyers and sellers are always at odds. They want everything fixed. The seller doesn't want to fix anything. So that's where the negotiation skills of a realtor come into play. And they have to keep it calm, keep it cool, keep it business, and just talk through what these items are. So if there's some things that a buyer comes to the table with and says, I want these things fixed, and they're visible when they purchased the home, my position as representing a seller will be, we didn't get a full price offer. We knew that the windows had glazing on them, for example, or that the carpet needed to be repaired. That's a visible defect in the home, so we're not going to fix that, and we're going to accept the lower price because there are visible defects in the home. So that would be my suggestion for the negotiation for the seller, and then of course the seller makes the final decision what they want to do, and then they would go back. So it all comes down to a meeting of the minds with that. So that can be a stumbling block. The second one is the appraisal. So if we had the beautiful home on the block, everything looks great, the buyer says, I like that, we support the price best we can, but we're asking a little bit more and the buyer's willing to pay a little bit more, then we have to convince the appraiser that is the value and that we're not exceeding what can be supported within the marketplace. And when we do that, we just hope that the appraiser looks at the most recent comps and looks at the condition of the home and looks within the amenities of the home. And one of the things that I ask my sellers to do is just to write a list of everything that they did to improve the home and what are the updates in the home so that we can give that to the appraiser to show the love and care and the upgrades that they did to support the value that the buyer was willing to pay. So I would say those are the two stumbling blocks after somebody gets a contract.
Interesting. So what do you think then a home seller should do in order to prepare their home for the market?
Great question. Sometimes it's a good idea to do a pre-list home inspection. So that's where the seller would do it in advance of putting the house on the market to see if there's any deficiencies in the home that they can remedy before they put the house on the market. Sometimes that's advisable. Where you want to be careful of that is if you do a home inspection prior to listing and it shows deficiencies in the home, and then you put the house on the market, those deficiencies may become a material defect or a latent defect in the home, meaning it has to be disclosed to the new buyers. Okay? So sometimes we put a house on the market and the seller has no idea that there's a deficiency in the home, and it's not, so obviously nothing would be disclosed. If they do a home inspection prior to and the inspector finds things that are wrong, they now have to either fix it or to tell the people that there are some deficiencies within the home and that they would have to tackle as a buyer. So you have to be careful with the pre-listing inspections. The other thing that we do to try to increase value in homes is we stage all of our homes. We know that a staged home will sell faster and generally for more money. So we invest in that with all of our sellers. So all of our sellers, when they decide to list their home, the first person that they meet with is going to be a home stager. The home stager is going to go out, and her main purpose is to increase the exposure to the largest number of people that are looking. So we have helped her to define who the buyer profile is. So is it a younger couple who are the first-time buyers, and they're going to be looking for things to be able to get into a home without doing a whole lot of work? Is it a empty nester where we're trying to appeal to somebody who is moving down, so maybe steps wouldn't be an exciting thing for them? And then we try to stage it to maximize the way that it looks and marry that with the buyer profile. And what we have found is that when we stage homes, we stage them and we fit that buyer profile, we found that they were moving faster and that we were getting more money for the home than a neighbor might have done, because we were taking the things that may be less appealing and remedying them before we put the house on the market. So that's another way to help people to get a higher net on their home.
Does that include things like maybe getting rid of furniture in the home or rearranging rooms or painting or anything like that?
Yep, great question. A stager will say, okay, this room is too small, maybe put a lighter color paint on it. This room looks too small, let's take this furniture out or change the location of the furniture. So sometimes, for example, one thing that I immediately notice is when I walk into a house and I walk into the back of a piece of furniture, say a couch, that truncates the size of that room. So the moment that you see the back of that chair, you're looking at the size of the room from that spot to the wall, as opposed to if there's space behind it, opening that space up, it will make your room immediately feel larger. Area rugs, where they warm up a room, they actually also close the space. So if you're looking at a room and you need to help that room to feel like it's a larger room, the stager may suggest you remove the area rugs, which a lot of people are surprised with. But we find that also helps. Emptying closets out. If you don't need it, if you're selling in a spring season, get rid of all of your winter stuff. If you're not using it, take it out of your home and put it in a portable storage. Get rid of it. Get it out. Because people want to know that the size of their home is going to accommodate all of their needs. So that's one of the things. Another thing.
In talking about that, I don't particularly like the idea of having some strangers walk through my house while I still live there and looking in my closets, etc. How do you make that process easier?
Well, it's a good question, Rick, and sometimes we can't. This is somebody who is going to make a large investment, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 investment, and they want to see all the nooks and crannies. They want to see everything that's beautiful and things that may not be beautiful. So they want to look in all of the drawers. They open up the kitchen cabinets. They go through your medicine cabinet. Although that's not a whole lot about real estate, is it? But we know people do it. So we just say if there's something that's private or something that's expensive, put it away, hide it. Don't leave it out for anybody to see. Just for security reasons, and you just don't want something going missing. And fortunately, in my 25 years, I've never had that. but it just makes common sense that if you don't want somebody to see it, put it away.
I will bet that you've got a story or two about some pretty horrendous homes that people have tried to sell.
You know, I've got lots of them. Some of them I can't even share with your audience. But after 25 years, you have seen it all.
So let's kind of move on. So we've talked about trying to price your home. We've talked about how to set it up. So let's say now we've had some folks come through. And oh, by the way, probably worse than having lowball offers is maybe getting no offers at all. Right? No one even coming into the home. What's going on there?
Your house is priced wrong. And I can tell you this globally across all of your audience. If your home isn't selling, it's not priced correctly. Here's why I know that. You've heard the adage, location, 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 haven't you, Rick?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Real estate is location, location, location. I'm going to debunk that here for a minute. I'm going to say that regardless of your location, if your house isn't priced correctly, it's not going to sell. So you can have the perfect location, 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 perfect location, everybody wants it, but if it is not priced to sell, it's never going to. If you have a less desirable location, but your house is priced to sell, it will. So it is not location, location, location. It is price, price, price. Sometimes, unfortunately, you may have a beautiful location, but your next-door neighbor didn't take care of his house, and there are pieces of siding that are missing. The shrubs are overgrown. This has nothing to do with your home, but because it is a visible deterrent for buyers, it's going to affect the value of your home.
I hate that neighbor.
Right. We hate that neighbor. So we've gotten pretty creative. There was one house that was a beautiful house, but it wasn't selling. We didn't think it was priced, but we did know that all the feedback from the showings came back saying that house is atrocious across the street. So I said to the seller, I said, listen, if you're looking at this knowing that we're still not there and it's likely we're going to need a price reduction, and this was a higher price luxury home, what if we took a $15,000 price reduction? Would you be willing to do that? And he said, yes. I said, okay, now I want to get a little creative because I think your house is priced well if that house wasn't like that across the street. So let's do this. How well do you know that guy? Oh, I know him well. What if we took that $15,000 and changed the appearance of the front of his house, and we cut the lawn, and we fixed the shrubbery, we put some siding back on, we painted the foundation where the paint is chipping, and we did some of that stuff? Would you be willing to put your money into that house instead of your house? So I talked him into doing that. We did some stuff to the other house, and the house sold that weekend. Wow. We didn't reduce the price, but that was the deterrent for that home. So sometimes we have to look at what the feedback is and get really creative and dig a little to figure out a way to get your home to sell and not being boxed into the traditional thinking. Wow. And I think that's sometimes where some of the realtors get stuck, where they just sort of stop thinking about possibilities. And I'm here to suggest you don't ever stop thinking about possibilities. You continually think about different ways by listening to feedback and being able to pivot when needed. And that was one of the examples that I could give to you.
That's a great example. That's very, very interesting idea. Tell me how you market a home for sale these days. I mean, a lot of people, especially people who are ready to kind of downsize, and older generations may not be into all the digital stuff. How do you go about that these days?
Well, a lot of it is the psychology. So when I sit down with a seller, I ask him or her or them to tell me what it is that they loved about the home when they bought it. Why did you buy this house? Why did you buy this house in this community? Why did you buy this house in this community in this area? What was it that appealed to you and why? And then we do our marketing based on that. So again, I would say learning who your buyer demographic is, learning what your sellers loved about it and what people in the community love about it, and determining what the USP is. And the USP is a unique selling proposition. So what does your home have that other people in the community that are on the market now, what they don't have? What don't you have that they do have where we might need to minimize a drawback? But the most important thing is to establish what your unique selling proposition is, figure out who your audience is, and then target those people through the language that you use in the marketing. So I just recently took over a house that was on the market for 88 days and went to the person's house. I did my due diligence. I did the research in advance, and I looked at the marketing that the agent did, and I thought, man, they're really missing the mark here. They are a few houses down from the water. People move to the Eastern Shore because of the lifestyle of being on the water, and there was very little mentioned about it. So I told the seller, I'm going to completely re-strategize the way this is marketed. So we did, and I figured out who the buyer profile was, and then I married my language with what that buyer profile looks for, and we sold it in 9 days. And it was, I think we reduced the price $5,000 just to get it fresh and back on the market. But just because of the change and the shift in the marketing and marrying what the needs of that buyer profile wants and then delivering it to them, the message hit the right people. So regardless of the platform that we use, that could be that they looked on the MLS and saw it. That could be that they grabbed a flyer from the front brochure box. That could be because I have reached out to other agents who are selling in that area. You know, when I got the listing, I went through and said, who are the selling agents, the buyer's agents who actually sold homes in there, and I want to make sure that they know that this house is on the market, so we'll send that information to them. So we don't just sit and put a for sale sign in the system. We need to do a whole lot of marketing to make sure that we are hitting the people who have their hands on the buyers for that buyer demographic. So there's a lot of psychology in it.
And when it comes to all the digital stuff that I mentioned, that's something that your team handles, correct? A home seller doesn't necessarily have to worry about that.
That's right. So there's a lot of stuff that we do for example, on Facebook with boosted ads. So we can say, okay, who are the people that are looking in this area, in this price range, that have mentioned something about water-oriented communities, and then we target market to those locations. There's also something that if you could picture a radius with a pin in the middle. The pin is the house that we have for sale. And then we might reach out about a mile or 2 miles and call those people to say, hey, there's going to be a house that's coming on the market in your area in this price range. Are you looking to make a move, or is there anybody else in your family, friends, or in your circles that you would love to have in your neighborhood because there's a house that's getting ready to come on the market? So you really need to be aggressive and creative in trying to reach out to the people. And we have had much success in doing that.
Well, Diane, what inspired you to become a realtor?
Good question. So I started way back when, it seems like forever ago, and I started out as a receptionist for a mortgage company, and I learned quickly that numbers does not excite me. That doesn't do it for me. But to watch people get excited about buying or selling a home, that really made me, I loved to watch that. So now, over 25 years, I don't get quite as excited about the homes that I'm selling. That's the product that I'm selling. But what I love, absolutely love, is the relationships that I form when I'm working with these people, and to watch them for whatever reason they're selling. And sometimes it's a happy reason, and sometimes it's a sad reason. Sometimes someone passed away, or somebody had to go into a nursing home, or somebody lost their job and they can't afford it. But what I like still, after 25 years, is that I am able to help them get from this stage to the next. And that's what still thrills me after all of those years.
I think we could probably do a deep dive with you in just kind of, looking at this from a business perspective and how you went about your career and getting to the point that you are. And we'll save that topic for another day. But I do want to ask you this. Is there anything that you learned, a lesson that you learned kind of early on in your career that still impacts how you do business today?
Yes. Here's one. I was working for a builder at the time, years ago, and I was in a community that was very busy, and you have to learn to spend time with people who are the real buyers as opposed to people that are coming for decorating ideas. They come into the model, and some people, they pretend they're looking to buy, but really they're just looking for decorating ideas to take home with them and to upgrade their home.
And does that bug you? Because I've done that before, too.
No, it doesn't bug me at all. Just be honest about it, so I'm not spending time with you that is useless time that you don't want to be spending doing that either. If you want to come in, I welcome you. Come on in, and I'll spend my time with somebody that's looking to make a move. So I did that, and I remember this was in my first year of sales that I was talking to a lady who she said, I don't know if I'm going to buy today or ever, but I think that I'm going to make a move eventually. So her sense of urgency wasn't there, and I asked her some other qualifying questions, and I just said, this person is not making a move anytime soon. So I went over and I talked to somebody else. I had a couple of people in the model, and it's, it's a tricky situation to try to spend quality time with each person, and you want to give that quality time to them as they deserve it. So I went through and did my pre-qualification, meaning, how quickly are each of these people looking to move and who is the most likely going to be the buyer. So I learned quickly when I spent time with the other person that this buyer was, in fact, wanting to buy now. So I sat down with her and we went over numbers. And again, she said she wasn't sure when she was going to buy, but eventually. And I talked with her and out she went. And then I made my calls. And then she called me back and she said, okay, I want to buy now. So it was a reminder to me at that instant that you don't always know the motivation or the urgency of a buyer because they just might be telling you that just so that you lay off. So it quickly reminded me of a bigger picture to say, never qualify people. Everybody is a buyer. You just don't know when. So that has stuck with me for literally 25 years. And I tell that example to the young people coming into the industry now, that although you have to pre-qualify because that's how we determine, who the buyers are going to be, you have to be very careful of not getting rid of somebody that didn't explain that they were going to be buying in the next 15 minutes. You need to stick with them, hear them out, talk with them, learn about what they're looking to do, and then solve their problem, period. That's what we do for a living.
So pre-qualify, but don't necessarily disqualify.
Exactly right. Well said.
Great advice, Diane. How can somebody find out more about you and the Donnelly Group and how you guys can help?
Email me at diane@tdgmoves. That is T as in Tom, D as in Donnelly, G as in group, and then the word moves, moves.com. And Diane is spelled Diane. Web address is www.tdgmoves.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm under the Donnelly Group. I'm on Twitter for the Donnelly Group and LinkedIn Donnelly Group. Or you can find me under LinkedIn as Diane Donnelly as well.
And I'll also share this information in the description of the show once it's posted online as well. Diane Donnelly, president of the Donnelly Group of Keller Williams Flagship of Maryland. Thank you so much, Diane, for joining us today and helping out our home sellers.
So it's my absolute pleasure. Glad to help.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Business Innovators Radio. I'm your host, Rick Brown. Until we talk again, remember that true leadership must be for the benefit of the followers. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.